The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
I think the reason why people in my community moved past that and reelected me, and the reason why we're going to be able to earn votes in every part of the country, is that elections are about this. They're about voters asking the question, how will my life be different if you get elected president versus somebody else? It is remarkable how Americans are capable of moving past old habits, moving past old prejudices.
Pete Buttigieg speaking this morning about old prejudices that Americans can move past. In context, he was speaking of Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina, speaking about basically confirming not confirming. Clyburn was agreeing that Buttigieg is going to have a hard time with conservative black voters in South Carolina. Pete Buttigieg is pushing back on it. But the funny thing about it is, as we discussed last week, Pete Buttigieg's team is the team that put out this focus group that said that black voters are not going to be drawn to Pete Buttigieg because he's gay. Well, no, that's not going to be the case. They don't know him. Voters don't know him. Never heard of this joker. And they already see that they have no reason to actually support this guy. And that has absolutely nothing to do with his sexuality. Now, are there going to be, this is actually a great way to start the show, because ultimately I'm going to have to talk about identity politics and garbage progressives and so-called progressives. I don't even know where the TJ from the Amazing Atheist, I don't know what side of the spectrum he considers himself. He probably thinks he's enlightened above labels or something like that. So ultimately, this conversation is going to conclude with a discussion on identity politics. And this is the perfect example to start with, because there will be people who don't like Pete Buttigieg because he is gay, to be certain. However, to lay that at the feet of the black community is another form of weaponizing that identity. So you can have both things happening at the same time. Both the reality that there are going to be people in this country who are 100% not ready, uncomfortable with, and homophobic, and not going to accept a gay president. This is true. However, it is wrong and extremely problematic to lay this at the feet of the black community, Mayor Pete. A couple of things have happened in this regard that really kind of show you how problematic Pete Buttigieg is. Because, well, here's an example. Zerlina Maxwell from Sirius XM Progressive, or what, I forgot the name of the station. I think it's like Sirius Progressive or something like that. I'm not necessarily a fan of hers, but this is what she said about it. She said, "I'm offended that some folks in the media are covering Mayor Pete like he can win when he's at zero with the base of the Democratic Party, black people." Now, this was while all these other conversations were going on in the background about this focus group that Pete's team leaked, saying that his real problem with the black community is that black people don't like the fact that he's gay. Never mind the fact that we have plenty of gay people in the black community. Now, this is what Liz Smith, she's a senior advisor to Pete Buttigieg. This is what she replied to Zerlina Maxwell on Twitter. She said, "I would agree that bias is showing, but it ain't from those folks." Talking about bias isn't showing from the media. So here's the thing. Does this matter? Kind of not. Does it matter? Kind of, sort of does. It matters because it really helps us to understand how to navigate identity politics and why it's worthwhile doing it. But also it points to the kind of this dismissive tone, this overall dismissive tone that comes from Mayor Pete's campaign. And this is what Mayor Pete has a problem, and it's not the fact that he's gay. We'll get back to the identity politics later. His problem is not that he's gay. His problem is that he has a very condescending tone. He has a very dismissive attitude towards just about everybody. And he has this sense of entitlement that he, so what? He graduated from Harvard University. Congratulations. So did Julian Castro. So did Cory Booker. He was a Rhodes Scholar. Congratulations. So was, I believe, Cory Booker and Julian Castro. He was a mayor of a town, small town, South Bend, Indiana. Well, whoop-de-doo. Cory Booker was a mayor, but even more so, like Julian Castro served in Congress. Senator Booker. I mean, the pedigree is exactly the same. Actually, their pedigree is better. But you have an entire establishment rallying behind Mayor Pete, because not only is Mayor Pete, I don't know, like he's palatable. He's palatable to the establishment, not only because of his politics, but for other reasons. Clear as day. Because there's nothing that Mayor Pete brings to the table that Cory Booker doesn't bring to the table, that Julian Castro doesn't bring to the table. And I'm not a fan of any of them. Any of them. But what's so bothersome about Mayor Pete is that he just has this. Actually, instead of me describing it, listen to yourself. Listen to it for yourself. And listen to how he speaks to people from his own city, South Bend, as they protested him and as he tried to overtalk them. Listen.
Running for president? But if you truly running for president and you want people to vote for you? But if you running for president and you want black people to vote for you? That's a downfall. That's not going to happen.
I'm not asking for your vote. You ain't going to
I'm sorry. Listen, man, don't run up on black people like that, right? I mean, don't run up on anybody like that, but particularly, I mean, come on, how does he sit there to people from his own city with cameras there and say, I'm not asking for your vote? I tell you how, because it's the natural response of someone who doesn't like the fact that he's being challenged by this particular individual. He's basically saying, I don't need you. I don't want you. And you know what the black woman said? You're not going to get us either. This is why Pete is polling at 0% with black people. This is why Pete is not going to win. Of course, there are black people who are homophobic, but yes, there are people in I mean, look at all the legislation that is there. Do you think it's been all the anti-LGBTQ legislation out there? Not a single piece was passed by black voters, by black legislators. You do have your religiously conservative people. I already covered that. Bishop Paul Morton, I think he's absolutely wrong. I unfollowed him, and I'll tell him to his face that he needs to just be quiet. So there are going to be religiously conservative people who are uncomfortable with a gay president. But you know what? This is what I said yesterday, and I'll say it again. I would fight to help Pete Buttigieg become president despite, or even include, like, it's not even despite his sexuality. It's like, it's completely indifferent to me, his sexuality. But I would fight even harder for him to become president against people who were afraid of his sexuality. Right? I would double down and work triple hard just so that he could win in the face of all those people who are homophobic. I'm not going to sit back. There's a big but coming, right? Big but. But I'm not going to sit back and say, oh, we're not ready. We're not ready for a gay president. No, we run headlong into that and say, OK, that's another barrier that we have to break down. I would fight that fight on behalf of Pete Buttigieg, but his politics are crap. He is a centrist, empty suit who's looking to protect the healthcare industry, who's making he literally is looking you in the eye and saying, I don't really want to do anything for you, but don't you think I'm traditionally handsome? And he's like, I'm super smart and I speak so many different languages and I can tell you that we're not going to get Medicare for all in at least 7 different languages. I can look you in the eye and say that I'm not going to do anything to make your life materially better. So while I would be honored to be on the front line of fighting against homophobic people, no matter where we found them, in order to make this country ready for a gay president, because we're not free until we're all free. I would be honored to take up that fight, but it won't be on behalf of Pete Buttigieg, because he is not here for us. Not whatsoever. He's here for his own ambition and nothing more.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
And as always, I want to take a second to thank our newest patron. And we only have one new patron today, Peter P. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. It really means a lot. Our show cannot operate without you all. So please, everyone, listen, just go. Like, even if you could only pledge $1, I mean, $3 is, preferable. $5 is even better. But if you could only pledge $1, if you're listening to the podcast now, ask yourself, is it worth $1? Now, obviously, the first question you have to ask is, can you afford $1? And I don't say that sarcastically, because sometimes at the end of the month, $1 is the difference between going into the overdraft and not. So obviously, that's the first question. But if you can answer that first question, then the second question you should ask is this show worth $1 or even $3 a month? And if you've listened to me long enough, then I'm going to tell you, yes, hell yeah. The show is absolutely worth $5, $10 a month. But go www.patreon.com/the BPD show and become a patron today. I want to read off. Come on, let's get five new members so I can read off 5 new members tomorrow. That's what I would like to do. Okay, let's get into identity politics. I don't know if I want to have this fight, only because there's so many fights to fight, but I think it's necessary, right? Yesterday I tweeted out the following. I said, progressive commentators still telling you that identity politics don't matter are going to help you lose this election. And this concludes my TED Talk. The Amazing Atheist, I don't know if you were from, I don't even know if he still does work. I don't follow his channel. I used to like him back in early 2000s, 2008. Somewhere around there. I used to really like his work because, as a skeptic, as a Christian skeptic, I'd always loved hearing rational arguments against Christianity. I just did. Don't ask me why, even though I've still stayed a Christian. I used to love his work because he, for a while there, had some really good arguments. Then he just kind of fell off. But anyway, this was his reply. He said, identity politics are toxically bad for the left, as polling data shows that the majority of people from all walks of life detest political correctness. No one wants a let's all walk on eggshells candidate. Okay. First and foremost, this is a disingenuous argument because he seamlessly conflates identity politics with political correctness. And I have to preface this with this. I can understand why it would be uncomfortable for white people in this country to have to take a moment to take into consideration the plight of everyone else. America's default position is identity politics for white people. Don't believe me? Okay, I know I play it all the time, but here's the evidence.
But do you understand what the New York Times wants and the far left want? They want to break down the white Christian male power structure, of which you're a part, and so am I.
Now, what's hilarious about this, that was Bill O'Reilly speaking to Senator John McCain, who was a presidential candidate at the time. So this wasn't even a big deal. This was on Fox News. This didn't even get a separate headline, right? Because it's so common. It's such common knowledge. Everybody knows that America's power structure is that of white Christian men. Now, what's hilarious about this is that people like Kyle Kulinski and TJ, the Amazing Atheist, they know that there is an identity that they fight against all the time. They fight against the identity politics of Christians, right? And they're fighting on behalf of atheists and agnostics in this country who are on the receiving end of that identity politics that are being played against the rest of America who aren't Christian. Their entire platforms, Secular Talk, The Amazing Atheist, they have built entire platforms out of fighting against that identity that is at the core of America's political structure, Christianity. And right on. I absolutely, I love listening to TJ. As a Christian skeptic, like I said, I love listening to it. So it's not that they can't see that identity politics matter and that they themselves have been on the receiving end of a particular identity. They see it. They built entire platforms off of it. What they don't want to see is the other two parts of that trifecta, the white Christian men trifecta. They want to see the problem with the Christian side of the identity, but they don't want to acknowledge the white male part of that trifecta of power structure in this country. Bottom line, period. In the discussion, Why? Because they're white men. Now, like I said before, I can understand how it may be difficult, how it is absolutely difficult for you to be a white person in this country and to actually have to pause and take in consideration that you have a position in this country that other people are not privileged to have. And that there's a power structure, like Bill O'Reilly said, that is created and caters to you. And as a result, there are unique problems that were created by that power structure for which you are a beneficiary, through which you're a beneficiary. There are problems created by that power structure that everyone else who is not a white Christian man has had to fight relentlessly throughout American history, hell, throughout world history, or at least the history of Western civilization. We have had to fight relentlessly against white Christian male power. They can see the Christian problem. They just can't see. I mean, not to be redundant, but can anyone guess why they can't see the problem with the white male power structure, but they can see the problem with the white male Christian? They can see the Christian problem, but not the white male problem. Okay, I was being extremely redundant there. But so there are unique problems that are specific. They are identity specific. If you are not a Christian, then you clearly understand that there is Christian supremacy in this country. If you're not a straight man or a straight woman, then you understand that there's heterosexual supremacy in this country, and not only in media, but also in politics, in healthcare. Like literally, people still are trying to fight to make sure that they can have access to and get healthcare for their partners and for their spouses now. Thankfully, they're able to get married and finally get health insurance and share that with their spouse of the same sex. That was an identity specific struggle. But no, let's not play identity politics, right? I mean, if you're not straight, if you're not a Christian, you can definitely see it. If you're not a man, oh, this is the one they hate the most because there's nothing more aggravating to a dude than to have to take a step back and see his role in the patriarchy. Remember, that was a bad word. I just call it male supremacy now because people are so afraid of the word patriarchy, as though there's not male dominance in this society that drenches down from top to bottom. I mean, you might be irritated and aggravated to death by feminists for whatever reason, but you cannot deny the fact that there's a power structure that is male dominated in this country and has been. And therefore, there are unique problems. Like, why do I have to make this case to people who are otherwise very logical and people who are otherwise very capable of seeing problems with nuance and understanding a critical analysis of a situation? In every other circumstance, people like Kyle Kulinski and TJ, I forgot his last name, the amazing atheist, they're totally capable and have the skill set of seeing this thing critically because they do so on behalf of atheists, but then they become intentionally obtuse when it comes to that other part of that threefold power structure that Bill O'Reilly said was what?
The white Christian male power structure of which you're a part, and so am I.
So they're completely incapable. They dispense with all logic. They dispense with all reasoning when it comes to that the two-thirds of the identity that America, the default position, the default identitarian politics that are always at play in this country, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the entire existence of this country, predating this country. There has been an identitarian politics that has been played against everyone who is not white, Christian, and male. They can see the Christian problem, but they can't see the white problem. They can't see the male problem. And this is what's become championed by people like my friend Kyle Kulinski. This is what he said. I mentioned it yesterday, but hear it for yourself. This is how he responded to Charlie Kirk as Kirk begins to describe black unemployment, erroneously describe it under Trump. Listen in.
Statistics is the poverty rate. I mentioned that. The black poverty rate is the lowest it has ever been. Poverty is a holistic measurement of income, of debt, of likelihood to graduate high school. The entire picture, it's the lowest it's ever been in recorded history in the black community. And that's something really to be said, Kyle.
I don't play identity politics, so don't bring up black or Asian. Just tell me what the actual rate is.
Look, These are numbers from the federal government, perfectly fair. So how about this?
I mean, seriously, the second voice that you heard was that of my progressive friend, Kyle Kulinski, saying, I don't do identity politics, so don't bring up black otherwise. Like, so this is so smug and condescending, and you know what? It's being forwarded as this type of enlightenment when actuality it's extremely lazy, and that's putting it nicely. What it is the fact that Kyle, just like TJ, they're irritated, and they don't want to have to confront that there are certain types of politics. There are issues, not just politics. There are real life issues that go beyond their personal experience. There are people who deal with struggles that go far beyond their personal experience, and it has nothing to do, TJ, with political correctness. Because I can totally tell you to go yourself and not be concerned about political correctness because you have a head interpretation of the entire world that you can't see because you're a privileged you. And I don't bleep that out because I'm concerned about political correctness. I bleep it out because I'm a part of the Christian power structure and my pastor listens to this show. But then to Kyle, don't talk to you about anything black. My dude, do you know how condescending and dismissive that is of so many people that you're going to need to help your boy, the one you worship, Bernie Sanders, get into office? You're going to need the black vote, my dude. And so if you're running around here telling people that black issues don't matter and because they're identity politics, then you are certainly not. You are going to help contribute to the failure of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Yes, absolutely, because you cannot possibly expect black people to come out and support someone who's going to turn around and say, don't talk to me about it. Can you imagine Sanders saying that? Don't talk to me about anything black. Get your stuff together, man.
This is according to Oxfam, of the world's 85 richest people is equal to the 3.5 billion poorest people.
It's fantastic. And this is a great thing because it inspires everybody, gets the motivation to look up to the 1% and say, I want to become one of those people. I'm going to fight hard to get up to the top. This is fantastic news, and of course I applaud it. What can be wrong with this?
Really?
Yes, really.
So somebody living on
I celebrate capitalism.
$1 a day in Africa is getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to be Bill Gates.
That's the motivation everybody needs.
Between me and
I'm
that
not
guy
against
is
charity.
motivation. I just need to pull up my socks.
I am not.
I don't have socks.
The host finally got it at the end. That was Kevin. That was the male voice that you heard was Kevin O'Leary from the Shark Tank. And I mean, I'm only playing that because of the absurdity of the statement. Actually is reflected completely in American politics. Like, I don't really care about Kevin O'Leary. He's just kind of trolling America, trying to get as much publicity as he can with these shock statements. But I play it because this is the mindset of America, right? This is why we haven't burned anything down yet, is because you have so many people who honestly believe that if they just work hard enough, they too can become the next billionaire. Or hell, even a millionaire. Or better yet, if you just work hard enough, then you can get into the upper class. Maybe you'll only make $200,000 a year. But if you work hard enough, you can actually get out of poverty and get to the middle class. You know, you'll still be struggling paycheck to paycheck. But if you work hard enough, you can actually get off of living off the streets and get into the working class. See, it's a mentality that the reason you're in the state that you're in the situation that you're in, it's because you just don't work hard enough. The reason homeless people are homeless is because they don't work hard enough. They work hard enough, then they can be in the working class. Well, the reason the working class is the working class because they don't work hard enough. And if they worked hard enough, they'd move up to the middle class. Well, the reason the middle class is the middle class because they just don't work hard enough. And if they worked hard enough, then they can move up to the upper middle class and then into becoming rich. But if the reason the rich people aren't really millionaires, though, is because they're not working hard enough. If they worked hard enough, they could become millionaires. And the reason millionaires aren't billion, you see how that logic, the flaw in that logic it is always the fault of every individual that the system operates exactly the way it operates, the way it's designed to operate. Capitalism is not designed to have a world of 7 billion billionaires. It's not. It's designed. It is intentionally structured to leverage the wealth and the resources and the labor of the masses to benefit the few. Yet, we operate and we govern ourselves as though all we have to do for anyone to succeed is work hard enough. That's how we legislate. And this is how you get corporate fascism. This is how you get capitalistic, this capitalistic consumer society that is just draining us not only of our labor, it's draining us of our resources, it's draining us of our lives, our entire lives, because everyone is chasing this same rotten piece of cheese. And the reality of it is that none of us, if you're born in poverty, you only have a 3% chance of moving out of poverty into moving into the upper middle class. That's it. That's it. This system is structured to pillage and plunder as many people as possible. And that's not because it's inevitable that a society has to be shaped like that. Our society could be literally shaped any way that we want to shape it. But we've decided, or the powers that be have decided, that they like the way it is. And the way they keep it the way it is by getting as many people as possible to buy into the idea that if I just work hard enough. Well, no. Because the system is not. How you think? Do you think that there's any number of combinations of jobs that you can get that's going to make you a billionaire? Keep waiting on it. It's never going to happen. Wake up, people.
Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.